I didn't expect to see him again. Not like this. It had been 6 years since high school. 6 years since I left that part of my life behind, the drama, the awkwardness, and especially him, Caleb. If someone had told me I'd end up living 2 floors above the guy who made senior year hell, I would have laughed. Or maybe cried. But here we were. Grown-ish men, still figuring life out. I saw him in the elevator first. I was coming back from my shift at the electronics store, still wearing the black polo, and name tag, brain fried from dealing with impatient customers. I just wanted to collapse on the couch. But as the elevator doors opened, there he was. Same cocky face, just sharper now. He'd filled out in the jaw and shoulders, traded in the boyish look for something more confident, the kind of glow-up that makes your stomach twist for all the wrong reasons. He had earbuds in and barely looked at me at first. But once the door slid shut, his eyes flicked up and locked on mine. And then he smiled. The damn smirk. "No way," he said, pulling out one earbud. "Evan?" My mouth moved before my brain could stop it. "Hey!" He grinned like we were old friends. "Dude, what the hell? You live here?" "Yeah. You?" "Just moved in. 4th floor." "Fucking great." "Small world," I mumbled. The elevator crept upward like it knew I was dying inside. We stopped on the 3rd floor for no reason, the doors opening to an empty hallway before closing again. I could feel him looking at me. "You look different," he said. "In a good way." "Thanks," I muttered, eyes fixed on the glowing floor number. He tilted his head. "Still mad at me?" That stopped me. I turned, caught off guard. "Why would I be mad?" I said, voice flat. He shrugged. "I was kind of an ass back then." My floor finally arrived. I stepped out without responding, already hitting the button to close the doors behind me. "Catch you around, man," he called as they shut. I didn't plan to. Truth is, Caleb wasn't my worst high school memory, but he was close. He wasn't a full-on bully. No lockers slammed or lunch trays flipped. He was smarter than that. His thing was the public digs, the sarcastic comments in class, the subtle mocking that made people laugh at you without realizing they were laughing at you. And he always made sure he came out looking charming. We had history class together. He sat behind me, always kicking my chair or whispering some joke under his breath. I used to count down the days until graduation just to be rid of that guy. And now he lived in my building. I told myself it didn't matter. People grow up. Maybe he wasn't the same person anymore. Maybe I wasn't. But then I saw him again the next morning, laughing with the building manager, looking like he'd lived here forever. And I felt that same knot twist in my stomach. He waved. Why was he waving? I gave him a nod and walked away. That Saturday, I was down in the laundry room. It was the only part of the building that still looked like it belonged in a horror movie. Flickering light, humming machines, damp air. I had headphones in and was zoning out, folding clothes on the metal table, when I heard someone behind me. "You always fold like that?" I turned. Caleb stood there, holding a basket of laundry and smiling like we were best friends. I pulled out one earbud. "What?" He gestured to my perfectly folded shirts. "You do laundry like it's an Olympic sport." "You judging my folding technique?" He chuckled. "Nah, just impressed." I rolled my eyes and went back to folding. But he didn't leave. He leaned against the counter, watching me with that same unreadable look he always had. "You seriously never thought about talking to me again after school?" I kept folding. "Why would I?" He hesitated. "We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either." "Could have fooled me." He let out a breath. "Okay, fair. I was an asshole. Especially to you. And I've thought about that more than I care to admit." I froze mid-fold. "You don't have to say this," I said. "Yeah, I do," he replied. "Because maybe I didn't know it then. Or maybe I just didn't want to admit it, but there was something about you. You got under my skin." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I think I liked you. And I didn't know how to deal with that. My hands froze. I stared at him, heart suddenly pounding. "Back then?" I asked. He nodded. "Back then. Maybe now too." He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the guy who made me feel small in high school. I saw someone scared to tell the truth, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't that I was scared or upset. It was more like I couldn't stop thinking about that look on his face. The honesty in it. The way he just stood there in the laundry room, admitting he used to like me, or maybe still did. Caleb, of all people. When I finally passed out, my dreams were a mess of high school lockers, half-folded laundry, and him, always him, standing too close, saying things he never said back then. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't make it a thing. Just let it pass. People say weird stuff when they're nostalgic or when they're trying to make peace with the past. That didn't mean he meant it the way it sounded. That didn't mean I had to do anything about it. But then I saw him again. I was getting my mail. He came in from outside, sweat soaked from a run, earbuds in again. He saw me, smiled like nothing had happened, and pulled the earbuds out. "Morning," he said. "Hey." There was a pause. He rocked back on his heels, catching his breath. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" I blinked. "What?" "Coffee. As in, two people. Sitting. Talking. Not a big deal." I stared at him. "Like a date?" He shrugged, but I saw the tension in his jaw. "If you want it to be." It would have been easier to say no, but I didn't. "Okay," I said. He smiled. "Tomorrow?" "Yeah," I said before I could think better of it. We met at a little cafe a few blocks from our building. It was one of those places with hipster baristas and drinks with names that barely made sense. Caleb showed up in jeans and a worn-out hoodie, looking way too comfortable for how awkward I felt. We ordered and found a quiet table in the back. "So," he said, stirring his coffee, "still mad at me?" I gave him a look. "You keep asking that." "Because I keep assuming the answer's yes." I let out a breath. "I don't know. I used to be. Now I just don't get why you're here doing this." He looked down at his cup for a second, then back up at me. "Because I owe you more than a vague apology in a laundry room." "You think coffee's gonna fix that?" He smiled. "Maybe not, but it's a start." I sipped my drink and watched him. He was different. Less cocky, more thoughtful. Or maybe I just never gave him the chance to show it before. "Okay," I said slowly. "Then be honest. Back in high school, was any of it real? The teasing, the looks, the weird comments? Did you know what you were doing?" He nodded once. "Some of it, yeah. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew I felt something around you that made me act like a jackass. Because you liked me? Because I didn't know what liking a guy even meant back then," he said, voice quiet. It scared the hell out of me. We sat in silence for a moment. I didn't know what to say. I remembered how it felt back then, to have a crush I couldn't name, to feel eyes on me in the hallway and wonder if I was crazy for hoping they meant something. And now here he was, sitting across from me, saying the words I used to dream of hearing. "I'm not expecting anything," he said after a moment. I wanted to start over, if you'll let me." I looked at him. Really looked. "Okay," I said, "but you're paying next time." He grinned. "Deal." That was the beginning of something I didn't have a name for yet. We started hanging out. Not every day, but enough that it felt like something was shifting. Coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into late-night chats on the stoop outside the building. Then one night, after we both had a little too much wine at his place, we ended up on his couch, knees touching, shoulders brushing. "You ever wonder what it would have been like?" he asked quietly. "If we figured this out sooner?" "All the time," I said without thinking. He looked at me, really looked, and for a second I thought he might kiss me. But he didn't. He just leaned back, close enough to feel his body heat, and said, "I want to do this right this time." And I believed him. I didn't tell anyone about Caleb. Not yet. Not because I was ashamed or anything like that. More because I didn't know what we were. It didn't feel like just friends, but it didn't feel like dating either. It was something in between. a quiet tension that lingered in the air when we sat too close or laughed a little too long. I kept replaying that night on his couch in my head. The way he looked at me, the way he didn't kiss me. It would have been easy, maybe even expected, but he didn't. And weirdly, that made me trust him more. He wasn't rushing. He was waiting. Still, it was hard not to overthink things. One night, I came back from work later than usual. My feet hurt. I had a headache from too much fluorescent lighting, and all I wanted was to collapse. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard someone coming down. It was him. He stopped when he saw me. "Hey, hey," I said, trying not to sound as exhausted as I felt. He frowned. "Long day?" "Longest." He hesitated, then nodded toward the floor below. "You want to come down for a bit? I made pasta. There's enough for two." I didn't even answer. I just followed him. His apartment was still half unpacked. Boxes in the corners, and some IKEA furniture that hadn't been fully assembled. But it already felt more like home than mine. Maybe it was the soft lighting, or the records playing quietly in the background, or just the way he moved in the space. Relaxed, unpretentious. He handed me a bowl of pasta, and we sat on the couch, eating in comfortable silence. "I almost forgot you could cook," I said. "I can do 3 things well," he replied, grinning. "Pasta, sarcasm, and getting under your skin." "Great resume," I muttered, but I was smiling. When we were done, he took the bowls and set them in the sink. Then he came back, slower this time, and sat closer. Our legs touched. He didn't move away. "I like having you here," he said. Something about the way he said it, like it surprised him too, made my chest tighten. "I like being here," I replied, voice quiet. There was a pause. A long one. The air between us shifted. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Back then, in high school, did you ever like me?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I did." He looked down, nodded once like he was letting that settle in. "Did it mess you up?" he asked. "The way I treated you?" I looked at him. "Yeah, but not in the way you think. I wasn't afraid of you or anything. I just hated how much I still wanted to be near you." He nodded again, his jaw tense. "I'm sorry," he said. "If I could go back." "You can't," I cut in gently. "But you're not that guy anymore. And I'm not the kid who used to flinch every time you walked past my locker." His eyes met mine. "No, you're not." Then it happened. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to stop him. I didn't. Our lips met, careful at first, unsure, like we were both waiting for the other to pull away. But neither of us did. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't perfect. It was warm, soft, real. When we pulled apart, we didn't speak. He just rested his forehead against mine, both of us breathing a little heavier than before. "I've been wanting to do that since sophomore year," he whispered. "Took you long enough." He laughed quietly. "Yeah." Then he kissed me again. And this time, I kissed him back like I meant it. The kiss didn't change everything overnight. It wasn't like we suddenly became a couple or walked around holding hands in the hallway. This wasn't high school. We were adults now, kind of, which made things simpler in some ways and way more complicated in others. The morning after, I woke up in my own apartment. I hadn't stayed the night. We kissed for a while, sat close on the couch talking until it got late. Then I made some dumb excuse about needing to feed my cat, which I didn't have, and left before things went further. He didn't try to stop me. He just stood at his door, hands in his hoodie pockets, and said, "Text me when you get in, yeah?" I did. He replied with just a heart emoji. I stared at it way too long. Over the next few weeks, whatever was happening between us got quieter but deeper. There were no grand declarations, no public affection, just little things. He started leaving his door open when he cooked, like he hoped I'd wander down. I always did. He'd leave post-it notes on my door. Dumb jokes, bad puns, once just a smiley face and "coffee" written underneath. I started to expect them. One Friday night, we ended up in his apartment again, sitting cross-legged on the floor going through a box of his old stuff. High school yearbooks, photos, random junk he never unpacked. "Look at this," he said, pulling out a photo. It was a group shot. Him, some football guys, a few girls, the usual crowd. I was in the back, half cut off by the frame. "I remember this party," he said. "You were there?" I shrugged. "Didn't really get invited. I think I showed up with someone else." He looked at the photo for a long time. "It's so weird. Back then I thought I had everything figured out." I laughed. "You were cocky, of course you did." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I was scared. Every time I looked at you, it felt like someone was turning on a light in a room I didn't want to admit existed. I didn't say anything. He set the photo down. "It messed me up. I took it out on you. I thought if I pushed you away hard enough, I could make it stop." "Did it?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, I just made you hate me." And I hated myself more. There was something raw in his voice that I hadn't heard before. Something younger. I reached out, took his hand. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. He looked at me. "Why not?" "Because you're not that guy anymore." He didn't say anything. Just leaned forward and kissed me again. Slower this time. His hands slid to my waist, pulling me gently toward him. We stayed on the floor for a long time, tangled together, not even really talking. Just feeling the weight of old things shifting between us, finally settling. But not everything was simple. One night, I was in the lobby getting food delivery when I heard someone call his name. I turned. A girl stood near the mailboxes. Blonde, tall, gym clothes. She looked familiar in that way. People from high school sometimes do. Someone you pass in the hallway 1,000 times. "Caleb?" she said again, confused. He walked in behind me, saw her, and froze. "Shit," he muttered. "Madison?" I guessed. "Yeah," he said under his breath. "Old friend." Her eyes flicked from him to me, then back. "You live here now?" "Yeah. Just moved in a few weeks ago." She smiled, a little too sweet. "Small world." There was a beat of silence. "I didn't know you two knew each other," she said, eyes on me. I opened my mouth to answer, but Caleb jumped in. "Yeah, we go way back." Something in her face shifted. I don't know if it was suspicion or curiosity, but she gave me a longer look than necessary. "Well," she said, backing toward the stairs. "Nice seeing you." Caleb nodded. "You too." She left without saying anything else. I turned to him. "Friend?" "Ex." "Ex?" I raised an eyebrow. He rubbed the back of his neck. "We dated for like a year. Back when I was still trying to pretend I was straight." I nodded slowly. "She looked like she still thinks you are." "I know," he said quietly. "I never told her, or anyone. You're the first." That caught me off guard. "Wait, you haven't come out to anyone?" He shook his head. "You're the only one who knows." A weight settled between us. Not heavy, exactly, but real. "Okay," I said after a moment. "Then we take it slow. Your pace. I'm not going to push you." He looked at me like I had just handed him a second chance. "You're kind of amazing, you know that?" I smirked. "Yeah, I hear it all the time." He laughed. And for the first time, it didn't sound nervous. After that night with Madison, something shifted between us. Not in a bad way. Just, it got more real. When you know someone's hiding a part of themselves from the world, it changes how you move around them. I didn't push. I didn't ask when he'd come out or what he planned to say. I just kept being there. And he noticed. He started spending more time in my apartment than his own. Little by little, his things showed up in my space. A hoodie draped over my chair, his shampoo in my shower, a half-finished cereal box in my cupboard. But we still hadn't told anyone. Not that there was anyone to tell, really. My circle was small, mostly work friends I didn't hang out with much outside of shifts. And his? I was pretty sure he left most of them behind after high school, the same way I had. So it was just us. our own quiet world, 2 floors and a hallway apart. One night, after a lazy evening of takeout and a movie we didn't finish, we ended up lying on my couch. I had my head against his chest, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles on my arm. The glow of the TV flickered in the background, but neither of us was watching it. "You ever think about where we'd be if things were different?" he asked softly. I didn't have to ask what he meant. I nodded. "All the time." He let out a breath. I wasted so much of it. "You didn't know who you were yet." "Still," he said. "You deserved better." I lifted my head to look at him. "Maybe. But I still ended up here, didn't I?" He smiled, and it was that rare kind of smile. The one that starts slow, builds from the inside, and spreads all the way to his eyes. "I'm glad you're here," he said. And I believed him. The next day, everything blew up. Not between us, but around us. I had just finished work and was walking back into the building, earbuds in, zoning out to some random playlist, when I saw Madison again. She was standing by the mailboxes, phone in hand, eyes narrowed like she was working through a math problem she couldn't quite solve. She spotted me immediately. "Hey," I pulled out one earbud. "Hey, you live with Caleb now?" she asked, casual but sharp. "No," I said. "Why?" She gave a slow nod, like that confirmed something for her. "I saw him leaving your apartment this morning. He had a hoodie and coffee. Looked real domestic," I shrugged. "We're friends." Her eyes narrowed more. "He was never like this before. Not with me." I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You're the reason he won't talk to me anymore, aren't you?" "I think that's something you should ask him." She gave me a look. Not angry exactly, just hurt and trying not to show it. "He's different. I don't know what happened, but..." She trailed off, shook her head, and walked out of the building. I stood there for a minute, trying to decide whether to text him. I didn't need to. The elevator dinged, and there he was, hair still damp from a shower, wearing my hoodie. "Hey," he said, stepping out. "Everything okay?" I looked at him. "Madison was just here." He froze. "What'd she say?" "Nothing you didn't expect." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I should have told her." "It's not about her," I said. "It's about what you want to do. I'm not asking you to announce anything." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I know. But maybe I want to." That surprised me. He stepped closer. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending. I want to be real. With you." I swallowed, unsure what to say. "I don't know how to do it all at once," he continued. "But I want to try." I nodded slowly. "Okay." His hand found mine, right there in the hallway. And just like that, something changed. Not with words, but with action. Later that night, we sat on the rooftop. Our building wasn't fancy, but the view was decent. Rooftops and neon lights, the buzz of the city below. He had his arm around me, and I leaned into him, the air just cool enough to make it feel like fall was coming. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I know. But I'm also excited. For once, I don't feel like I'm lying." "You're not." We sat in silence for a while. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You were the first guy the first ever had a crush on." I turned to him. "In high school," he said. "I didn't even realize it at first. But you were." "What gave it away?" I asked, trying to keep the mood light. He smiled. "The way I couldn't stop staring at you in history class. The way I got jealous when you talked to anyone else. The way I hated that you were so comfortable with yourself." I laughed softly. I was just better at pretending." "Well," he said, "you faked it better than I did." I leaned into him, resting my head against his shoulder. "Fake it till you make it," I murmured. He squeezed my hand. "I think I'm finally making it." Coming out for Caleb wasn't a single moment. It was a series of quiet ones. Like the time he introduced me to his old college friend as someone important. and then later clarified over beers that he meant what it sounded like. Or when he started showing up at my apartment without knocking, slipping in like it was already his place, which, in all but paperwork, it was. But the biggest moment came unexpectedly. It was a Saturday. We were at a housewarming party for one of his coworkers, one of the first social events we'd gone to as whatever we were. I hadn't expected anything. Just figured we'd hang out, drink, smile through small talk, and go home. What I didn't expect was him reaching for my hand in the middle of a crowded living room. He didn't make a speech. He didn't announce anything. He just grabbed my hand and kept talking to his friend like nothing had changed. Except everything had. Afterward, as we walked home in the cool night air, I turned to him. "You okay?" He nodded. "Felt right." I squeezed his hand. It was, and that was it. No fireworks, no applause, just us, walking home hand in hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because by then, it was. We hit a bump a week later. It wasn't big, just one of those stupid, quiet arguments that doesn't feel like much until it festers. It started with dishes. Of all things, he'd been crashing at my place more and more, and I guess we both fell into habits. Me expecting things to stay the way they were, him thinking we were basically living together now. He left the sink full. I made a snide comment. He rolled his eyes. I snapped back. He said, "You're acting like your apartment is some temple I'm messing up." That hit harder than it should have. We didn't talk for a full day. The silence was worse than the fight. The next evening, he showed up at my door. No knocking. Just walked in, stood there holding 2 beers, and said, "We good?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I don't want this to fall apart." He handed me a beer. Then we learned how to talk before it does. We clinked bottles and sat on the floor. He leaned his head against my shoulder. "I've never had this before," he said. "This?" He nodded. "Something that feels like home." And I didn't say anything because I didn't have to. One night, a few weeks later, we ended up back on the rooftop again. That had become our spot. Our little retreat when the world got too loud. He was lying back, arms behind his head, staring up at the stars that barely peeked through the city haze. "I've been thinking," he said. "That's dangerous," he smirked. "Shut up," I looked over at him. "What about?" "Moving in," I blinked. "You mean officially?" He turned his head, looked at me. "I'm already here half the time. We split groceries. I leave clothes everywhere. The only thing I'm missing is a drawer and my name on the lease." I laughed softly. "You're not wrong." "Is that a yes?" I paused for a beat, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to let the moment sit. "Yeah," I said, "let's do it." His smile in that moment, it wasn't big or dramatic. It was quiet, real, the kind that stays with you. We spent the next weekend moving his stuff up. It wasn't a huge ordeal. He didn't own much, and most of it was already in my apartment anyway. But something about doing it officially made it feel like we were crossing a line. It felt like a beginning. We rearranged the bedroom. He insisted on moving the bed to face the window. I argued about the glare. We compromised. We argued about closet space. I gave him one of the 2 shelves. He called me generous. That night we lay in bed, the room still smelling faintly of cardboard and dust. "You know," he said, tracing his fingers across my chest, "we're basically domestic now." I groaned. "Don't say that like it's sexy," he laughed, kissed my shoulder. "You love it." "Maybe." He went quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "I've never felt this safe with anyone." I pulled him closer. "Then let's make sure it stays that way." We didn't have a defining moment after that. No big speech, no sudden Instagram post, no coming out party with rainbow balloons and tears. Instead, we just lived. Caleb moved in, officially. His name went on the lease. His toothbrush sat next to mine, and his socks started showing up in my drawers no matter how many times I told him to keep them separate. We fought about dumb things like who left the freezer open and whose turn it was to buy toilet paper. We made up just as quickly, usually over food or a lazy morning in bed. Life started to feel normal. And I didn't realize how rare that feeling was, how much I'd missed it, until we were sitting on the couch one night watching some bad documentary about haunted hotels. He was half asleep, his head on my lap, my fingers running through his hair without even thinking about it. It hit me then. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I wasn't bracing for some sarcastic comment or pulling back out of fear. I was just there, and so was he, comfortable, solid, real. A few weeks later, we ran into an old teacher from high school at a bookstore. She recognized us immediately, even though it took me a second to place her. She asked the usual small talk questions. What are you up to now? Where do you live? All that. Then she said something that stuck. You two still inseparable, huh? She said with a chuckle. Just like back in school. Caleb looked at me. I looked at him, and for the first time, neither of us flinched. Yeah, he said. I guess we always were. We just didn't know it then. She smiled and wandered off, and we stood there in the aisle, something unspoken passing between us. You handled that like a pro, I said. I feel like I could take on the world now, he replied, mock heroic. You've come a long way, Carter. He looked at me. You helped. I nudged him. Don't get soft on me. No promises. We never really defined things with labels. At least not out loud. People figured it out. Friends, coworkers, family. Some asked questions. Most didn't. There were awkward moments. Tense dinners, sideways glances at holidays. But there were also good things. Better things. Like when my mom met him and, after the third visit, started referring to him as, "You're Caleb." Or when we took a weekend trip up the coast and I caught him snapping a photo of me watching the sunset, and he didn't even try to pretend he wasn't doing it. Or the morning we both overslept and had to race to get ready, bumping into each other and swearing while brushing our teeth side by side, and I caught a glimpse of us in the mirror. Two guys. Ordinary as hell. But we looked happy. Really happy. A few months later, on a slow Sunday morning, we were sitting on the fire escape drinking coffee. The city was quiet for once. A breeze rolled in from somewhere, and he leaned his head on my shoulder. Did you ever think we'd end up here? He asked. Honestly? No. Me neither. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, I'm glad I was wrong. I smiled into my cup. Me too.